Welcome, everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Women's Writers Collective Author Spotlight. Today we're going to be talking with Sherry Brourman, who is the author of this amazing book, From Bodily Knowledge to Intuitive Movement. And we'll find out more what that means. So thank you all for coming and expressing interest in this work. And I would like to introduce Sherry. Hi, Sherry.
Hi, Leila. Hello, everybody. Thank you. I'm so excited to get to be with you all today.
All right. So a little bit about Sherry. She's a physical therapist, a yoga therapist, and a lifelong movement educator whose work bridges her fields with pain science through the lens of her personal lived experience and her clinical work. Her path began early at age 12 when she volunteered at a school for children with disabilities, and in many ways it's never stopped. With over 5 decades in clinical experience and more than 25 years in yoga therapy, Sherry's work centers on a simple but profound idea that is very dear to my heart as well, that learning to feel movement can open the door to awareness, presence, and healing in many forms and to many degrees. Her teaching invites both clinicians and individuals to move beyond correcting the body from the outside and instead discover how the body organizes itself from within, using energetic cues via the breath, attention, and curiosity. She is the author, as I mentioned, of From Bodily Knowledge to Intuitive Movement, which is a narrative and practical exploration of how movement, perception, and inner awareness come together in the healing process. She's also the author of Walk Yourself Well, a perennially popular book, and an earlier work that reflects the roots of her long-standing approach to breath and movement. Sherry continues to teach, write, and explore the evolving relationship between the body, mind, and presence, always as a student first. So, a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience in there.
Thank you so much, Leila.
Yeah. So let's start with this question. And it's not the question that we were going to lead with, but I'm really curious as to what did you want people to know that isn't generally out there?
Thank you. It's a wonderful first question. Um, when you think about physical therapy and yoga therapy, or at least I believe that when most people think about physical therapy and yoga therapy, they think of something being prescribed, whether it's a sequence of postures or specific exercises, and it really brings you to a parts mentality. Um, and even in yoga, this sequence for this condition type of thing really pulls energy into this very common old impression of working therapeutically on what hurts. Um, and this book and my work is really about helping people into their individuality. If there's a mission, it's for people to find themselves within this work. I can't even really hand it to them, but I can guide, I can give ideas from what I see, from what I think, from what I hear. but the end game is for people to leave feeling like they own the process, they own themselves, they own their new direction, and it's on them to continue to create what is working. It's not about fixing what isn't working. It's about being with what is working.
So that's a different perspective than a lot of people will have come up against in their healing journey. I'm
Yeah.
wondering, do you sometimes get pushback from clients or patients who want the physical, they just want the fixing, they want you to fix them?
Um, yes, and rarely. I think that for that, it's another amazing question because, sure, it would seem so. And I think that partly the many years have helped me learn how to sense what the entry point needs to be for each person. And so, whether we're talking about koshas, layers, ways of beginning to be with a stranger, or we're talking about just the experience they bring you, there's volumes written now on how to listen. And that's the soul of it, is we have to come to listen. We can't come to bring some idea. We have to come to listen and find out what they need and what they can hear at that moment. And so, yeah, it's very different where you begin with each person. It seems, we're all looking at each other right now, and we see each other's faces, and we all have two eyes, we all have a nose, and we all have a mouth, and yet look at the individuality that we have. And imagine that extending into the gamut of layers of being, to the transections of the bodily systems that we get to sort of drink in order to be with somebody. So I think that that helps a lot with that problem, Leila, of, but what about my shoulder? Yeah.
Yeah. And because this way of approaching healing is different, I'm wondering how people respond to it. Like, what are some of the things that people say about this way of working when they've been exposed to it for the first time?
I mean, I want to say they get excited, um, because they get introduced to their own needs. And I think, the old school of going to the doctor, um, it is just the idea of going to the doctor is an instantaneous way to disassociate from yourself. Um, and all of a sudden, they have all the power. Like the minute you think of going to the doctor, you're giving away the power. And that in this case, what they find out is I'm not going to take it. Actually, don't want the power. It's a relief for me to know that it's on them and it's not on me.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
it's hard. It's hard. Um, the depth of remembering that it isn't about you, that it isn't your ego here, and that if you kind of can't believe I'm about to say this, but you've already got me. If you love enough, you can give it away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like it's a paradigm shift on both parts.
Yeah,
From the therapist perspective, it's not about you, and it's not you doing something to someone. And
right.
on the part of the recipient, it's a shift from I want the therapist to heal me
Hmm.
to I am required to be an active participant in my own healing process. And that's a
Right.
real shift.
That's a huge,
Yeah,
huge shift.
yeah, yeah. All right. So, when you wrote this book, what did you want people to know that made you want to write this book?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted them to know themselves. Um, um, there were a few missions with this book. One of them, a big one, and one of the reasons the book took such a long time to write. Um,
Tell us how long it took you to write the book, Sherry.
10 years. 10 years. And Leila made me promise to remember to tell you that I hand wrote the first many, many pages. I want to say maybe 50 or 100. I hand wrote because I started out thinking I was writing a clinical book. You know, the task I was given from my publisher was write a book that's somewhere in between a medical textbook. They were all medical textbook editors before they created Handspring. Give us a book that's somewhere between a medical textbook and a lay book. And so, in my mind, that was a perfect assignment, and it was going to be a clinical book. I envisioned it as a textbook. And so I started out typing, and writing this book that was out of my wheelhouse. It wasn't me. It was, something that I kept thinking, my publisher gave this to me. This is my job. I have to grow. I have to change. And then one day, in incredible frustration, I moved the computer over and I just started handwriting what was in my heart. And I realized that my book was going to be narrative, and it was going to be me giving my years of experience, not some task that came from the other world. Um, and so that's how it was born. And then the next thing that was very important to me was I wanted it to be, I still wanted it to be for clinicians. I wanted people to be able to learn how to use the book for their students, their patients. But I also wanted anybody to be able to read the book. I want also, so I chose to make it for both, which may have made it for neither. I'm not sure yet. But I did choose to make it for both clinicians and lay people. And the way that I did that, it became a narrative, it became a story. And the story had a beginning and a middle and an end. At least for me, I want to know if any of you who read it find that there's a story there. Please tell me. Um, but and also, I didn't want to be teaching anatomy in the course of the narrative. And so I created all of these appendices that made it so that there isn't a book, so that there isn't a word in the book that you can't find in those appendices. So if you're hungry and you want to learn about yourself and you don't know the first thing about medicine, you can read this book if you're willing to use the appendices. And so the tip is print the appendices. You can do that at my website. Print the appendices, have them in a folder so that you're not having to flip through the book every time you come to a word that you don't know. So the book, I think, works for both clinicians and lay people.
Hmm. So you've said that your purpose or your main intention in writing the book was to help people to know themselves. Can you flesh that out a little more?
Sure, sure. Yes, and so, I think that we think, most of us here are clinicians, and I think that we think that when people say, it hurts here, it hurts right here, they know that that's to do with their shoulder. But it is incredible how not true that is. And really, like, um, I think when I'm teaching, that everything is basic and ordinary, and even last Tuesday. And it turns out that it's eye opener for people who don't know their body. And so I have learned to translate, I hope, well enough that my students who are not medically minded can hear me and digest the words that I use. But in order to find yourself in the ways that I'm talking about, to find bodily awareness as your road in to this, to find bodily awareness as your road to presence, right? Because they can't really be separated. It's such a beautiful thing, the way we run. All of our systems really are talking to each other 100% of the time. And so if bodily awareness is one of the things that you're really interested in, because you learn that this is going to require bodily awareness, people are willing to learn that. This it isn't going to work with a Band-Aid, but it will work with bodily awareness and bodily acceptance.
Mm-hmm.
Radical bodily acceptance. Um, and so if individuality is the mission, you don't get there mentally. That's only mentally. And so if individuality is the mission, if knowing yourself is the mission, unfortunately, we don't get to pick which ones we want to know. Once the determination, the mission becomes, I want to know, I want to understand myself. When this hurts, I want to be able to think about all of the things that are contributing to this, not the tissue. I want to understand my mood, my belief system around it, what I was taught as a kid, the messages that I've gotten from my friends, what the doctor told me 17 years ago that I'm still afraid of. All of it, that it's so luxurious to be able to accept all of ourselves.
Mm-hmm. So, what are some of the pathways to bodily awareness?
Um, so I'll choose. Um, there's so many tracks we could get on to answer that wonderful question. Um, and I'll choose the ideas. I hope I don't startle anybody. Of interoception, exteroception, and proprioception. And I'll tell you what they are in case anybody is um, jangled by that. And so interoception is an awareness of what's happening inside of ourselves. And, one thing, I have to back up. I said earlier, and I just want to point to it once more, that rather than looking at wanting to help somebody by understanding what hurts them, we're looking at somebody we want to help by utilizing what's working well for them. And so when you choose an interoceptive something to relate to, most people are breathing, makes an easy road in. And most people can say, yes, I'm breathing. They might not say, yes, I'm using gravity, or yes, I understand that I'm lifting my body some way, but they will say, yes, I'm breathing. You can get that one pretty much 100% of the time. And once you have, yes, I'm breathing, you have the beginning of awareness. Unless you're checking in, you can't answer the question. And checking in is interoceptive. So now you have a road. Now you can start talking about the colors of breathing. And you can start talking about maybe they can't feel their lungs, but they can feel their ribs move. And maybe you can take it further and say, and in what direction can you feel your ribs moving? Is it on the front? Is it on the sides? Is it on the back? Where is it? Now you really have them feeling. And then guess what? Your lungs are directly connected to the inside of your ribs. So what you're really telling me is you know where your lungs are. You know which part of your lungs are being blown up and shrinking. Now you're with them. Now you're with somebody because they're willing to be with themselves. So that's one of the roads in. And of course, we'll also utilize exteroception and proprioception. You know what? This would actually be a really good place for my 5-minute sequence.
Okay,
May I interrupt?
let's go into a 5-minute practice.
Yeah, great. So I will ask you to please just come sitting a little taller in your chair. Thank you. And we'll look at, are you breathing? And you don't have to answer these questions out loud. And unless you put your finger up in the air, I'm going to assume that you're cool with it and you're answering it quietly and you're on board and you're at ease. Good, good. Do we have a working deal here? Thank you. So, are you breathing? And what does the texture of your breathing feel like right now? Does it feel kind of easy, a little bit forced? Um, d does it feel anxious, like kind of fast? Um, is there a, can you say there's a nature to this moment's manner of breath? Um, and then just staying with that for a minute so that you can begin to notice, are there any movements in your body that you can say are directly related to your manner of breath? Are there any movements of your innards, your outards, your ribs, your neck, your forehead, any place else in your body that seems to be directly related to this manner of breath that you are discovering as we speak? And then as you come into sort of play with that, maybe you can find some element, whether it's the length of breath or the depth of breath, or the body part that is being affected by your breath, that you can play with a little bit, wiggle with. Is there something that you can decide to change a little bit and go, yeah, I can do that? Now we have you relating to yourself in a direct way, and we have you taking charge. It doesn't need to be big, and it certainly doesn't need to be anything that's provocative. Just something little that you can say, yeah, I absolutely can do that. Now, just keeping that softly on board. The next piece is since we're sitting, we'll talk about why is it that we're sitting up and we aren't all pancakes in our chairs or pancakes on the ground. So there's something that we're doing, because we know, of course, that gravity wants us to be a pancake on the ground. And so there's something that we're doing effectively, subconsciously for the most part, that is keeping us from being a pancake on the ground. And I'd love you to just get in there a little more, breathing on board with, where is it happening? How am I managing? And to that end, I'll suggest that you let go a couple of times and see what happens when you do less of whatever that is. See what happens when you do more of whatever that is. And now we are entering into the exteroceptive world, because we're in relationship with something outside of the body that happens to be called gravity. And we can decide to move around with gravity, right? If you're standing, you can move around on your feet. If you're sitting, you can move around on your seat print. And now you're becoming more exteroceptively adept. Your innards and your outards can talk to each other well. And so we can say, yep, I can do that. Now you have yourself in command at this level of your body, your choice, and the transaction of all of these systems inside of you that continue to relate to each other effectively, even as you change things around, as you acknowledge things that can be changed around, as you know you have the capacity to change these things around. Wait, it gets better. Now, if you open your eyes, or even if you don't, forget it, don't open your eyes, you can start to feel the ground, and it has a plane, right? Some angle. Maybe yours is horizontal, maybe yours is tilted some way, but there's an angle there that is helping you get a sense of where you are in space. And if you were to open your eyes, you'd see walls, and they'd also help you get a sense of whether you were upright or off to the side. And so now you've added proprioception into this bodily awareness that is very, very definitely your own. And finally, in case we want to make this an actual practice, we can choose to add balance to this little sequence. And how we would add balance is, for example, if your eyes are closed, by saying inside, okay, I think I'll horizontalize my eyes. And then you can open your eyes and check, did I? And we don't have a mirror, but you've got a camera in front of you and you can check. When I decided to horizontalize my eyes, did I? And now you have a balancing act to bring with. You can add more. You can lean on one side of your seat print, or you can lift a leg off the ground. And you can be checking inside. How are my lungs as I add these things? Does the rhythm of my breath change? Ooh, more bodily awareness. Do I need more air for this change that I'm creating inside of my body and outside of my body? Do I need more strength? Um, um, uh, uh, do I need to use my eyes, or can I play the game with all the different angles that I'm choosing of what do I need to do with my eyes? Do I get dizzy when I move around? So I think that's it. That's the sequence for to answer the question of how do you address finding your way in? How do you get to the place where you can say, I am positively here with myself, as myself? No pretenses, just me.
Thank you. And you so beautifully invited that with your languaging. And for, for me to hear the shift from the usual simple observational, observe your breath, where is it moving, all of those kinds of things, how far down is it going, the way that you led that practice immediately brought each of us into that process in our own individual way to be not just an observer, but a beer and a doer as well. Yeah, a participant
Thank
is,
you.
yeah, a
Yeah,
participant. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, beautiful,
Thank you.
beautiful.
Thank you.
All right. So another question that I have is, and we talked about this in our pre-interview session, about alignment. So alignment has got a bit of a bad rap these days, and I'm wondering how you would answer the question: how has alignment been misrepresented, and how would you frame your understanding of alignment?
Yeah. Thank you, Leila. Yeah. Um, People think alignment is like chicken soup. If I do it right, it's going to be healing. And the only problem with that is none of us are the same. So what is right? And right is the way your body gives you the richest breath. That's the bottom line. There's nothing about having your feet straight or your hips level, whether you're walking or in a yoga posture, that is right. And there's only that breath we just now got accustomed to. If you can have that breath all the way with all of its colors and all of its layers, that's the track. And it doesn't have anything to do with lining things up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm in total agreement with that in terms of alignment being more about right relationship, whether that's right relationship between parts of the body or right relationship between the parts of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah. And it's funny, if this is bothering most people, respond, excuse me, react to that by making a physical shift.
yeah,
it might be immediate and it might be over time, but there's a physical shift. And that physical shift, I want to use a word that has an open door. That physical shift interrupts or interrupts that beautiful full breath, that elastic, velvety breath that we worked with a few minutes ago. And so, because we know we just got people to feel what that feels like and acknowledge it and be with it, now you can have them notice how their breath is when they're like this. And you don't have to tell them what to do at all. All you have to say is find that place where that breath feels beautiful, and they will do it. No cues needed.
So it becomes an intuitive or something that emerges from that person. And the other thing about doing it that way is that when people are following that process, then they're always with themselves, because if they want to maintain that smooth, velvety breath, then their experimentation or their exploration has to take place within that container
That's
of
right.
the breath. And so any abrupt alignment changes would immediately be noticed by that
Right.
person. Oh, when I do that, I'm mixing, I'm leaving that beautiful breath.
I'm
But if
leaving
I
that.
do it this way, then here I am. Yeah.
And I mean, I think I'm finding the exceptions to it because I want to be sure I'm being clear. And so, say you have this, and it's enough that that process we went through didn't, 100%. I'm not suggesting that there's some miracle cure. I just want to say everything takes time. Everything is a process. And learning, even just learning what it feels like to have that breath takes time. We all did it here because you all can hear me perfectly. And of course, probably today you're going to face a new patient who you have to find a month's worth of words to get there. Um, um, but it's the root of it, right? It's understanding that that's possible, and finding that, and also that remembering that first thing I think that we said today, that um, you really have to look for what's right and not be fixated on what's wrong, if there even is anything wrong. Um, and so there's a different door to go through. But anyway, I just want to make sure that it's not sounding like, yeah, all you do is this little breath,
Yeah.
everything.
No, that's a very
Yeah,
radical notion in the healing professions, that we look for what is working. That's that's not what people are taught. They're taught mostly to zero in on the problem.
on what's wrong.
Yeah, yeah. So maybe taking that a little bit further, when you use that approach of looking for what's right and acknowledging and affirming that with the person that you're working with, how does that change the game?
Yeah. Um, Remember that I know I don't need to say this to you, Leila, but that, at this point, we've had a long, ideally deep conversation with somebody. We know some things that they love that turn them on. We know some things that they're very afraid of. We know some things that they believe in, you know, as strongly as we believe in religion or politics. Um, and so, it isn't like a pretty flowery deck of cards. Um, in that way that everything's just going to kind of pop out and make sense. But so what I like to do is and I'm honestly intrigued and interested because I love people. I love being with people. I love learning about people. I love that everybody has their own depth and it's going to be completely different to mine. And so I'm intrigued by asking questions about the things that they love. I'm not, it's not like a checklist for me. It's something that I just feel gifted to get to ask, privileged to get to ask people and learn something new. Um, and so by moving through that space, um, they begin to feel seen. And I think that that's the most important thing there is that when we're working with somebody, um, what do we love when we're exploring something that we know we need to work with? Being seen, being heard, being validated. That's what we all love, I think. Um, and so it isn't something that's forced. It's not something I decide to do. I'm looking for the parts that will honestly intrigue me, give me something. It's like selfish and that I can use um, and it gets them more excited about it too, right? And so we go through that door. Um, it's tricky when what somebody loves is chemistry and finding, movements that support chemistry. um, but that's generally the thing of it. And people that love chemistry generally have a grandkid or a dog or you know what I mean? There's always a way. You can find a way where there's some kind of movement that's going to make them a little bit happier.
Yeah, and it strikes me as you're talking, and the depth and the richness of your experience certainly comes through in your answer. But it strikes me that when we lead people to this interoceptive awareness, it starts to build, according to the research, a deeper sense of self. And so as people work in this way, then they become more themselves.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And that's the point.
And isn't
I
that
don't need
isn't
them
that
to leave.
wonderful?
Sorry, I missed that.
Isn't that wonderful?
It is so wonderful. Yeah, I don't need people to leave thinking they know how to exercise better. I really don't care. I need them to leave believing in themselves.
And that is so healing, Sherry. That is so healing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
All
you.
right. So maybe are there some concepts that you address in the book that are fairly new? I mean, obviously what we've been talking about, but other concepts that might be quite new for people. And I'm thinking specifically about how you address the pain neuroscience.
Sure. I think that the thread for that is to understand that every thought we have has an orienting response. It's huge to think that. And so when we are afraid, for example, that this is going to last forever, the orienting response in the form of the hormones released from the medicine chest in the brain actually causes changes in the body. And so it isn't to change the body, it's to look at the thoughts and to learn things like to become aware, to have early sensation detection. Oh, I learned that I'm kind of, this is a button for me. Um, and I learned that, when I get absorbed by this button, the rabbit hole appears. And I have to decide whether to use the rabbit hole or not. And I get to decide whether to use the rabbit hole or not. Because it turns out that if I can massage the thought, I can diffuse the rabbit hole. So, again, not miracle medicine, but enough of a shift that it's about me, my interpretation, my way of responding, rather than me reacting, no thought that I'm aware of, or just fear overcoming me, and getting lost in the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And people think that it's reflex. This is a hard one. Again, I'm not telling you something that's easy. People think that it's a reflex to pain. No, you don't understand. This really is bad. You can hear your mind. No, you can't diffuse this. I could end up in the hospital. The things that we come upon. Um, and so and it's almost like, it's not dramatic. It's the nature of kind of needing it to be bad enough to rationalize these big reactions. There's something almost soothing uh, about that. And I can relate to that. I have it too. And so when I can recognize that with somebody and be with them at that level and help with the diffusion. Yeah.
I love the concept of massaging the thought.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
so much friendlier than change your thought pattern, or shift your self-talk. It's like just let's just see what's there, and I love that. I
Mhm.
love that. Yeah.
Mhm.
There's a word that you use in your book, and I don't know if you made it up or if you got it from somewhere, but it's the concept of a sensorium.
Mhm.
Can you,
Didn't
can,
make it up. It's a
uh,
real word,
okay.
and it's such an important word. It is the um, I'm hating the word I'm about to use, but it is the conglomeration of all of our senses. And if we go back to our 5-minute sequence for a second, and the idea of going from the first step of do you breathe, mm-hmm. To how, to get from do you breathe to how, you almost automatically utilize sight, sound, taste, touch. Utilize touch, because you're sitting on something, there's touch going on. It's real. And so every thought has an orienting response that includes our sensorium.
Mhm.
And that's just true. Now we're busy, so we don't always notice all those beautiful features, but we can choose to use them. That we sure can do.
Yeah,
And
and it seems like you're asking people to shift from do this movement to sitting in a place of inquiry of how do you do this movement,
Yeah,
which is so much more rich and full and productive
it is.
and healing.
A question that I get a lot in my classes and with my students is I wake up so stiff in the morning, I really think my back broke, in the middle of the night. No, they say, no, it's really bad. Like, I'm not telling you I'm just kind of stiff. I'm telling you something terrible happens when I wake up in the morning. And I used to say, well, here's a bunch of stretches you can do when you wake up in the morning. And now I say, pretend like you're an amoeba inside of a big sack and move the sack in any direction that feels good. That's all I say.
Yeah, yeah, that's
It works.
I love that. I love that. Can you tell us a story about one of your patients or clients
Mhm.
who has been impacted by some of this work and the way that you do it?
Sure. Um, I have a student who came with, I'll say, horrific mid to low back pain. And horrific enough that she was pretty much in tears all the time. Um, and it took a long time for her to get enough tests that she finally got a diagnosis. And the diagnosis was, yeah, you have a big cyst at like T10, sitting on the nerve or something, language that should be banned from, don't get me on that road. Um, and so she had something she could say. She was a really interesting person in that she didn't say, well, there's nothing I can do about it. I quit. She never said that. And they said that this cyst was inoperable. Um, but what she did do was she came to every class I taught. Most of the time, she curled in a ball on her side on her mat and cried. But now and then she would come out of there and do a little something. This was years. Um, Last week, she told me that when pain comes up, she's just not even afraid of it anymore. She sort of doesn't care. She just blows it off. She said that um, she just tells herself things like, I've seen this before. I know it goes away. And happily told me, I have no pain. I just don't have any. I'm not afraid of it at all.
Wow, that's a testament to the practice, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And, we don't know. We never went back and got an x-ray to see if she still has a cyst. We don't know. And we don't really need to know
Yeah.
because she's absolutely fine. She does whatever she wants.
Wow. Wow.
And
And
she participates in 100% of the class.
wow, that's an amazing story.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So all of us, I think, as therapists and teachers, have the common feedback that comes most often to us as from students who have experienced our work. So I'm wondering what that might be for you. What do you hear most often? What kind of feedback do you hear most often
I
from
think the
the
biggest
students.
thing is that pain doesn't scare people. I think that's the biggest one. That they feel like they have tools.
Mm.
People have tools. They feel happy to they know they can make choices to rest or move or um, um, whatever they need. And they make choices and they know how to work with themselves. They know how to be with themselves. That's how they dismantle the fear. They really are being home in their bodies.
And that's a radical notion
Yeah.
for a lot of people. And I would imagine when they report back to their primary medical practitioners, there might be some surprise.
I do hear that story. But the thing is, it's not just to get rid of this or to get rid of that middle back pain that she had. It's to make it so that when something comes up anywhere in the body, an earache, like anywhere in the body, that you recognize, we all came up thinking we weren't supposed to have pain. Didn't we? Didn't we all grow up thinking these bodies, that pain was bad? And so once you learn this story, like I said, any sensation of pain can lead you to the road of your learning, of your presence, of your being. It doesn't have to lead you to the road of, oh my God.
Yeah.
Um, and it may not come as your natural very first thought. Your very first thought might be, oh my God. And in that case, oh my God is the cue to hang on a second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to take it from pain or dysfunction as something that people hate about themselves, they reject, to uh, a stimulus to
I
go
feel
deeper.
something important. I
Yeah.
want to be sure
Yes.
and dial up again. This is a little like my last interruption, but the idea isn't to get rid of anything.
Yeah.
And the idea is to accept yourself wherever you are, even if that is with pain.
Yeah.
And that pain can live on a back burner and you can have your life.
Yeah.
That's so important. I have pain. Does
Yeah.
anybody not?
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so I think, is getting so clear with yourself um, that, first of all, if something is going to go south, we're all just human here. Something could go south. But that if something is going to go south, you can trust that you're going to be with yourself that way too.
Yeah.
You don't have to wait till everything's okay. It starts right now,
Yeah. Yeah. Like the first Yoga Sutra.
like the first
Here we
yoga.
start. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a great place to end. We're at our time. So, if you could maybe tell people where they can find you, and I know
Sure.
you have an offer,
Yeah.
and then we'll go into a half hour of questions. We'll stop the recording, and anyone who needs to leave can leave, and people who want to be in the question part can stay.
Thank
So
you.
where can people be in touch with
Um,
you, see what you're
so I have
doing?
a website that has lots and lots of information and resources, and that's just sherrybrourman.com. I'm at Facebook. I'm at LinkedIn. And I've only just started to touch Instagram. It scares me for some reason, but I'm getting there. Um, and I have 2 books, and I'm easy to find. Any questions, anything you need, you can call. And thanks, Helene. And my offering, the gift that I'm very excited for you to have is the introduction to my book, which has cool little chapter summaries in it, as well as some other, I think, pearls, and the whole of chapter one. In my book, chapter one is the the psychosocial chapter. And so, because what I believe is that our moods and memories are more relevant than our physicality, that's the first thing I teach in my book. So that's the chapter that you'll receive for free. Yeah.
All right, okay. And before we finish the recording, I wanted to mention the next book club offering, which is on May 19th with the famous Robin Rothenberg, speaking about
Mhm.
her wonderful book, Restoring Prana, which probably a lot of you already know. So put that in your calendar. So thank you so much for your presence, everyone, and we'll stop the recording now, and please stick around for more interesting discussion.